Okay, so in this video, I'm going to go over some different expressions or different ways to use expressions. Expressions are bits of code that we can use to control animation and different effects in After Effects. Let's start with something simple. I'm going to maybe just start with the shape layer. Maybe I'll just start with a circle. I'm going to start with the circle here, and maybe I'll draw it on the outside. I actually want to maybe have like an orbiting planet. So right now there's no stroke on this, just kind of a fill. And I want to, if I wanted this to orbit around this, one thing that I could do is take the rotation, right? And rotate this at 360 degrees. I set the keyframe there, and that's 1 revolution. So that's pretty standard. If I wanted this to keep going, there's a few ways that I could do this with expressions. The way to turn on expressions is to hold on Alt and click on this stopwatch button. I believe there's another way up in here. If you select the property and you go up to animation and add expression, so there's this keyboard shortcut as well, but I always just hit Option and click on this to turn it on. And then what we can do is write an expression. There are looping expressions, which, and in a previous video I showed this, you could do a loop out here, and in this case, this is a full cycle. It represents 1 full revolution, so I could do loop out cycle, and that would just kind of keep looping and looping and looping. And again, the benefit of this is it keeps moving, and if I decide, it's got to go much faster, I can pull this closer and it's going to keep updating. Or if I say that's too fast and I want it to go more slow, I could do this and it'll just keep on going. So if I had some background animation I need to do, this could be one way to do it. Another thing that we could do, if we wanted this to keep moving in this direction, there's also another thing that we could write in here. And in the latest version of After Effects, looks like they give you the options. You can say offset, which is going to continue moving in whatever direction this is. So it's going to look functionally the same. It's basically taking this animation and continuing it on. So it keeps adding up, 1 revolution, 3 revolutions, 4 revolutions. Whereas if we did a loop cycle, it's really subtle, but it's actually repeating the value. So it's going to go to 0 times all the way up to 1, and then it's going to go back to 0. You don't realize that it's actually returning back to the original point because it's the same values, but that's the case. Maybe another. Maybe one thing I should do is make another shape here. Maybe I'll just make like. I'm gonna make something super basic. I'm actually just gonna make like a little rocket ship, if I can. This is as basic as I can do it. To give you an idea of how the loop out function would work, or the loop out with offset, it's one thing is it continues in the same direction or that the animation was headed in. So let's say I could just do this little bit, right? And I'm going to hit Option, click, loop out. I'm going to hit offset and make sure it's in quotes like that, and this should be capitalized, the O in there. Sometimes if you don't capitalize that O, it might be an issue. Some people like to always put a semicolon after this, but it will work without it. So I think that's okay. But you can see the difference here is that now that thing just keeps moving on its own, and so it keeps offsetting itself based off of the original keyframes that were here. So you can make it go faster. All right, so we've got that little animation there. Let's try something else. Let's make another planet in here and let's animate it a different way. I'm gonna maybe change the color a little bit. Oh, whoops. I changed it there, but that's fine. I want to make sure I'm not selecting any layers. I think that was the issue. Okay, I'm gonna make a new planet somewhere. Maybe it'll be here, and we'll just change the color slightly. Okay, so that's there. Another thing I could do with the rotation is I'm going to turn on expressions again. I can use the time value to animate this. So I could just write time. And the thing is, where it's going to use the time of the composition. Let's see what's happening. If you look really closely, it says 0.3. It's moving very, very slowly. So what we need to do here in this case, it's because the increment is just so slow, we want to multiply it by something so that we can actually see the value. So maybe we'll say times 10, and you use an asterisk to do multiplication. So now when we say times 10, you can see that that is being multiplied. Maybe we'll do 100 just to really see the difference there. And yeah, now we are using this expression time here. It's kind of helpful, because you don't actually need any keyframes there. So we're doing things in different ways. We did loop animations, loop expressions, and we use time in this case. All right. I'm going to make a new composition to talk about another concept. So here's the new composition, and let's say I had, let's say I needed to make a series of shapes, and they were maybe offset from each other, or they varied in size. Maybe I could do in the center a circle. So here's my basic shape, and I'm going to go to my ellipse. And right now the size is, it's 167, but maybe I'll do something like, maybe I want it to be 100 by 100. And then the next one, maybe I want it to be 200. Maybe I want to do like, a series of concentric circles. The next one I want to be 200, and then 300 and 400 and 500. I could do that, duplicate this and then open this up again. Or I'll keep that one the way it is, and I'll change this to 200, and let me just change the color here so you can see what I'm trying to do. I'm sort of getting at this point. I could do this and keep doing that, or what I'm going to do is actually, let me start with this one. I'm going to use another bit of code for the size. Let's turn the expressions on Option and click. And the thing I'm going to use is called index. Now, index looks at the number or the layer. Here in this case, you can see the index is 1. And so if I had more layers, it'd be 2, 3, 4, 5. It'd be sequential. This is actually good that this popped up, is if you're ever doing something and you make an error in your code in writing an expression, it will probably tell you that there's an error and it won't perform it properly. So if you see that, that's what it's telling you. So what I could do here is, it's telling me the expression result is of dimension 2, not 1. So there's actually going to be 2 issues that we're going to have to fix here. So index, I'm going to say index times 100. I'm still going to get the same error because, 1,000. This is still not 2 dimensions. If you look at this size here, this is 2 dimensions, 1 and 2. I need 2 values here, but I'm trying to feed it 1 value. So what I want to use is brackets here, because that's going to indicate that there's multiple multiple dimensions. So I'll do index times 100. comma, index. So this is a way for me to write in the second dimension, index times 100, and let's do another square bracket to close it out, and that will fix it. So this is a way for me to address having multiple dimensions. You'll see this sometimes in size or position or some values here, and it's good to know that these expressions you can write into pretty much anything you can keyframe. So they could be effects, they could be transformations, and other things. So now what I'm going to do is just make a duplicate of this, and I'm just duplicating this, and you can see it's actually changing. Each one is resizing, and maybe what I'll do is I'll just change the transparency to like 50, so that you can kind of see what's happening. That these are kind of moving on top of each other, and I could just keep doing this. And so imagine if I had a lot of these, that would be pretty nice for me to do that way. Okay, I'm going to keep doing some other things with expressions. Let's maybe try a new color out here. I'm going to draw another shape, another circle. One expression that's kind of fun to use, I'm going to, let's see, grab this here, is wiggle expression. So turn on expressions, Option and click. Wiggle is a nice thing we could do. It takes two values here. One is how many times per second it's moving. So we could do once per second, and then 50 is the range over which it's moving. So this is basically moving within a range of 50 pixels per second. And you can see if I made, instead of once per second, if I made this like 10 times per second, it would move a lot more quickly. It's a lot more jittery. The range is still similar, and it's kind of randomly moving around in that way. Expressions are really powerful. I started showing some basic ones. I did want to maybe show you what some of these other things are here. One thing that's helpful is there is a library of expressions here that you could try to use if you're unsure what things there are. There's, and some of the things that we use, like here's the wiggle. You can see what that is. It gives you some examples of, how to write it. So there's properties and variables and things that you can use. There's some math here. We could use sine waves and other things in there. And interpolation is really helpful because it lets you kind of convert values. One thing I'm going to do is maybe play around with the wiggle. This wiggle is fun. It's a nice effect, but sometimes if you just have a simple wiggle expression, it's a little bit uncontrollable. You won't be able to like stop this from wiggling unless you know how to work with this a little bit. So I wanted to show how you might do that. What I like to do sometimes is create null objects. Again, a null object is nothing. It's basically nothing. It doesn't really show up, but it can hold different data on it. So I'm gonna actually go to. There's a whole panel here called expression controls, and we could use sliders or checkboxes. I like the slider because it's a very intuitive type of control. So here's the thing. I want to actually and you can see the slider can be keyframed. I want a way to maybe take this value 50 and control it with the slider over time. So I could move the slider and move it really high and have the circle move around a lot, and then move it low and have it stop moving. So that might be a way for me to actually control the animation. One of the things that's really going to be helpful here is, we could target this by writing code in a very specific way, or we can use this Pickwhip item, which is like this little swirly thing, and we can connect it. I'm clicking and dragging and connect it this way, and you can see that it grabbed all the code that's necessary. If I tried to type that, I would probably make an error. I'd forget a period or mess up somewhere. So I just did that, and it automatically gave me the code to connect it. So now it looks like it's connected, except I think I'm missing one. Again, what happens if you mess up? It'll tell you something happened. I think I'm missing a a parentheses. Now this is really important to know if you're not familiar with code. All these parentheses and brackets need to be paired with another one. So I was missing this one over here was missing a paired parenthesis on that side. That was in that case. And many times I feel like that might be an issue if you see that. Okay, so right now the value of this is 0, so you're not really seeing a change. But let me start keyframing this. So let me start it at 50. Let me keyframe that up here. So I also want to show you what I'm doing. And then over time, I want this to go down to 0, so that now when I go to preview this, it's going to start off moving a lot, and then it's going to slowly lessen. So this is a way for me to like control some of this, and you could have a null object with a bunch of sliders, and that could it's almost like you're a puppeteer and you're controlling a bunch of things. This could be the place where you have that set up. You could have a bunch of different controls here, and then you could always rename these. So I could call this like wiggle amount. So you could have a pretty complex rig with sliders and things and control it from there. So that was one other thing to look at. Oh, right. Or actually, I'm going to delete this for now. We know what this looks like. I want to show another way that I could maybe use expressions to make this circle move. I have a little audio track here, a little Bieber music from my personal collection. And again, I'm not going to include the audio in here for copyright reasons, but I want you to see the waveform and know that this is music, and I want this audio to drive maybe the size of this circle or something like that, or maybe the position. What I can do is take this audio track, right-click on it, go to Keyframe Assistant, and go to Convert Audio to Keyframes. This is going to create a new null object that takes the audio amplitude, or sort of the volume level of this, and it converts it into these keyframes, and it gives me the left channel and the right channel. So if it's left and right, or kind of included stereo, we can move around. Oops. If we start moving around, you should see the values here. They're pretty. Some of them are pretty small. I think I saw some that were below 1. They don't look like they go up super high. The loudest parts of the audio are probably where this waveform is the highest. So you could think about that. Looks like maybe 5.76 or 6.14, depending on which channel. Let's use both channels just to kind of keep it easy. So this information, we could use this to control and hook it up to this circle right here. So maybe we'll do it with scale. Let's turn on expressions, Option+click, and let's Pickwhip this to the slider. So now you can see it's activated once I hover over it. Is that going to work? Well, remember, these values are very small, 5.76. So it's working, but it's just very small. So that audio is controlling the size of that. So a few things we could do. One is we could just multiply it, maybe multiply it by, I'm writing *20. Okay, what does that look like? Yeah, maybe that's enough. And I should also say that if you look at the code that was created when we connected the Pickwhip, you can see that this scale is a 2-dimensional value. So you can see that the square brackets were used, and actually what happened is it created a variable called temp, which it stored this information into. That's a description of what's happening on a programmatic level. But yeah, this is still happening. After Effects did it for you so that you could live your life. All right, so that's one way to do it. We could also take temp, and if you remember, there was this here, interpolation, linear. So we could use this formula, and we could even use easing as well. But I'm just going to use this this value. So what this means is you grab the value in the first t, that's what that, and then you take the original minimum of that, and then you take the maximum of that. In our case, it's probably going to be like something small up to about 5.76 or 6, something like that. And then you can remap the values from to a range that you want. Like maybe it's like 100 to 300 or something. So we can use this formula. We've kind of pasted it in here. I'm going to do a little bit of refactoring. Basically, the first number is this Pickwhip value, the value of the slider. Like I said, I think the minimum was probably around 0.5. The max we'll say is 6, and maybe we're remapping it from 100 to let's say 400. That's a little bit bigger, and put a parentheses there. I hope this isn't scaring people away, but and if that's like too complicated for you, like don't even worry about that. Just do what. Just take multiplication, and that you're gonna be fine that way. But for those people who want to like play around with this is another thing to see. Okay, okay. So that is running off of converting audio to keyframes and using that data to drive this animation. All right. The last thing I want to show, and I know that we've covered a lot of material. Hopefully, you can pause and stop as you go along. I want to use, want to let you know, like another great place to use grab expressions from is just the internet. People have written expressions, and you can use them to really finesse your own work. So you don't, some of these expressions you might not really fully understand, and maybe you won't be able to write them from scratch, but if you understand how to implement them, I think that's also a nice thing to have. So let me start with, another bouncing or another circle. And actually, what I want to do is like have a bouncing animation. I'm going to keyframe this. I really only need 2 keyframes here. But if, the bouncing ball animation is like a typical like motion graphics animation kind of thing to work on. Like there's all these things that happen, like the ball bounces and then it will bounce back up, and then it'll come back down, and it changes speed, and it can be a little bit tricky, and it's a little bit tedious. I'm going to show a way that I could do it like really quickly without too much work. I'm going to link to this in the description for the video. Here's a website that has some expressions here that you could grab and use. I really like this one called Inertial Bounce, and this is from graymachine.com. What we're going to do is grab this expression, this code, and if any of you are familiar with JavaScript, this should look. I mean, the expressions are basically written in JavaScript, I believe. To me, that's the lens that I view it through. There's like some little things that are a little bit different, but that might be helpful for you to understand these things. There's a little bit of different syntax, but a lot of I feel like that's the best model for me to view it through. Okay, so here's that code, and you can see there's some if statements in here. There's some variables that were created, and yeah, there's. Let's see what that looks like when we play it. It kind of added some of the bounce. It's not. Again, it's not. It's only working on the position. It's not playing around with the squash and stretch of this. But this is okay. I think for me to like kind of at least get close to what I'm trying to do. Maybe this is something we can play around with. What we can do though is actually go in and change these values to get a more pronounced or a reduced effect. So amplitude is something we could play around with. Like right now you saw how big it bounced, but if I take it and do 0.3, this is going to be a lot more bounciness, right? And again, if you move these closer together, that's also going to change the effect. So that we can change. For me, I use amplitude a lot as a way to change it. We'll change it to 0.05, and you'll see it should bounce a little bit less. Again, this isn't a true bouncy, squishy ball, but at least you're kind of seeing what this might look like, how this might work. So that is a quick demo of that. And I encourage you to, yeah, if there's certain expressions out there, you can go and there's the description here on kind of how to play around with this. I like to use this more for, let me just delete this, for something like rotation. So I'm gonna, here we go. Oops. If I was having this swing in from the top, I think it works pretty well for that. So I'm gonna start it here, and then we'll make it go down to 0. Again, we'll turn it on Option+click on this. I'm gonna copy and paste that into it, and I think I need a little bit more velocity on that. But you can see that moves. If I want more swinging, again, increase this number. Amplitude will generally do the trick. Yeah, there we go. So now, I've only put two keyframes down, but I feel like it's already feeling a little bit more dynamic. Okay, so to review, activating expressions, right? We find a property that we want to put this on. It could be keyframe effects. It could be, transformations. Option, click on that stopwatch. We can write those expressions, and I talked about a few different ones. If you are unsure, there's kind of a library of things in here that you can use, and it does follow this kind of syntax of programming. So be careful. Like, there's some things, like if you have multiple lines, you want to separate them by semicolons. But maybe that's, again, I don't want to scare you away. Pickwhip is an easy way for us to connect different elements without having to write all the code. And I talked about having null objects and using, having sliders and being able to control things that way. And that, I think, is pretty helpful. You can see this last button here is allowing you to see what does this look like on the graph editor when that code has been converted, and you can kind of see that sort of bounciness that's happening, that inertial bounce. Okay, so anyways, I hope that was helpful, and this is a lot to digest, and if you get some exposure to this, and if you're excited by this, take your time and get out there and learn some more.